Today, the most decisive battles are not fought with tanks or missiles. They unfold in data centers, orbiting satellites, and undersea cables. The front lines are invisible, but the stakes are enormous. Control over information, infrastructure, and influence. While the Berlin Wall fell in 1989 and the Soviet Union dissolved 2 years later, the strategic contest never truly ended. It simply changed form. The Cold War, as we once knew it, evolved not into peace, but into a quieter, more complex struggle for supremacy. This is the story of how the United States, long after the Iron Curtain was lifted, continues to fight for dominance in a world where power is no longer measured only in nuclear warheads, but in algorithms, semiconductors, and strategic alliances. In 2026, the United States commands the world's most advanced satellite network, dominates global internet infrastructure, and leads in artificial intelligence research. But these advantages didn't emerge overnight. They are the product of decades of strategic foresight, rooted in Cold War competition. Today's geopolitical tensions, whether in cyberspace, quantum computing, or global supply chains, are not isolated phenomena. They are the continuation of a long arc of rivalry, where the weapons have changed, but the objective remains the same: to shape the global order. To understand how we arrived here, we must go back, not to the fall of the Soviet Union, but to the moment the Cold War began to shift underground into realms unseen by the public eye. In the early Cold War, supremacy was measured in megatons. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction kept the peace through fear. But by the 1970s, both the US and the Soviet Union realized that the next frontier of power would not be nuclear, it would be informational. The US began investing heavily in what was then called Command, Control, Communications, and Intelligence, or C3I. These systems would later evolve into the backbone of the Internet, GPS, and real-time battlefield awareness. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, was established in 1958, not just to prevent technological surprise, but to ensure American leadership in emerging domains. The creation of ARPANET, the precursor to the Internet, was not a civilian experiment. It was a strategic move in a quiet war for information dominance. In contrast, the Soviet Union struggled to keep pace. Centralized planning and limited access to global markets hindered its ability to innovate at scale. While the US fostered a culture of decentralized innovation, the USSR remained bound by rigid control. This divergence would prove decisive not in 1989, but in the decades that followed. When the Cold War officially ended, many believed the strategic contest had been won. But inside the Pentagon, the CIA, and the National Security Council, a different view prevailed. The collapse of the Soviet Union did not end the competition, it merely changed its shape. Russia, China, and other emerging powers would now seek influence through different means: cyber operations, economic leverage, and technological parity. The United States responded not with military invasions, but with infrastructure. It invested in global communications networks, secured dominance in microprocessor manufacturing, and quietly built the architecture of the modern digital world. Companies like Intel, Cisco, and Microsoft were not just market leaders, they were strategic assets. Their global reach extended American influence into every corner of the planet. The 1999 NATO campaign in Kosovo showcased a new kind of warfare, driven by satellite intelligence, real-time targeting, and digital coordination. It was a demonstration not just of military might, but of technological integration. The message was clear: the United States had moved beyond brute force. It now fought with precision, speed, and information. By the early 2000s, a new competitor had emerged, China. Learning from the Soviet Union's collapse, pursued a different path, one that combined state control with market-driven innovation. While the U.S. focused on the Middle East, China invested in infrastructure, education, and technology. It built its own satellite constellations, developed cyber capabilities, and launched initiatives like Made in China 2025 to reduce dependence on Western technology. By the 2010s, the battlefield had shifted again. The contest was no longer just military, it was economic, digital, and ideological. The U.S. responded with export controls, investment restrictions, and a renewed focus on semiconductor independence. The CHIPS Act, passed in 2022, was not just an economic policy. It was a strategic maneuver, an acknowledgement that control over microelectronics is now as vital as control over oil once was. In this new Cold War, the battlefield is etched in silicon.
Today, supremacy is measured in less visible ways. Who controls the undersea cables that carry 95% of global internet traffic? Who writes the standards for 5G, AI, and quantum encryption? Who can defend their networks and disrupt others without firing a shot? The United States has quietly built an ecosystem of supremacy. Its intelligence agencies partner with private firms. Its military relies on commercial satellites. Its universities train the world's top engineers, many of whom stay and contribute to American innovation. Cyber Command, established in 2009, now operates alongside traditional military branches. Its mission? To defend the nation in a domain where attacks leave no craters, but can paralyze entire economies. This is not science fiction, it is the reality of modern conflict. What allowed the United States to maintain its edge long after the Cold War's official end? Part of the answer lies in strategic culture. The U.S. embraced adaptability, decentralized innovation, and long-term investment in research and development. It built alliances, not just military, but technological and economic. In contrast, authoritarian rivals often struggled with internal mistrust, limited transparency, and rigid hierarchies. These systems can mobilize quickly, but they rarely innovate sustainably. The Cold War taught the U.S. that supremacy is not a moment, it is a process, one that requires constant vigilance, reinvention, and strategic patience. More than 3 decades after the Cold War's supposed end, its legacy is everywhere. In the global internet, shaped by American protocols, in the GPS signals that guide civilian and military systems alike, in the dominance of the English language in science, commerce, and diplomacy. These are not accidents, they are the result of choices, strategic, technological, and cultural, made over generations. The Cold War never truly ended, it simply changed theaters. And in this new era, the battles are quieter, but no less consequential. Invisible supremacy is not about conquest, it is about influence, resilience, and the ability to shape the future without being seen. The United States continues to fight, not with fear, but with foresight, not for domination, but for stability in a world where power is no longer visible. The Cold War may be over in name, but its lessons endure, and its quiet continuation may define the 21st century more than any open conflict ever could. In a world where the battlefield is everywhere and nowhere, what does it truly mean to win?